Fortnite.
Rewind time. Yeah, if I control rewind, I would want Fortnite.
Well, I love the Souls games. They are so great that they even created a whole genre of games, the Soulslike, or better, a subgenre of action RPG. But are there games that came before Demon Souls have the same style? Well, we're gonna see in this video. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. This game is the reason why I make this video. I recently beat this game and noticed some similarities with Dark Souls, and it goes far beyond the surface, revealing a relation between two of the most influential games of their respective eras. Despite belonging to different generations and presenting contrasting atmospheres, it's possible to identify significant points of contact, both in mechanics and design philosophy. One of Ocarina of Time's most innovative features was the Z targeting system, which allowed players to lock onto enemies, making camera control in 3D combat much more manageable, a groundbreaking concept in 1998. Dark Souls inherits this idea. With a press of a button, players can focus the camera on an opponent, turning battles into more tactical and controlled encounters. This mechanic is essential in both games, shaping combat rhythm with an emphasis on positioning. While combat in Ocarina of Time is simpler, it already includes elements of dodging, reading enemy attacks, and counter-attacking, which Dark Souls would later refine. Linked side rolls, backflips, and shield-based parries mirror a combat style based on observation and reaction, is the foundation of Dark Souls combat. Both titles feature a cohesive, interconnected world, where areas logically connect and can often be revisited, with new tools or abilities that open previously inaccessible paths. In Dark Souls, this interconnectivity enhances the sense of discovery and provides time-saving shortcuts. The structure of Zelda's temples, each with unique bosses and mechanics, is reflected in the design of Dark Souls dungeons and boss fights. Temples require exploration, puzzle solving, and combat progression, culminating in a challenging boss. Similarly, Dark Souls presents a self-contained areas with unique aesthetics and gameplay challenges, typically ending in a memorable boss encounter. Both games reward exploration with shortcuts and hidden mechanisms, giving players a sense of mastery over the space. Hidetaka Miyazaki, creator of the Souls series, has openly stated he was strongly influenced by The Legend of Zelda, particularly Ocarina of Time. He mentions how is the sense of mystery, exploration, and world design left a lasting impression on his creative vision. This admiration can be felt not only in Dark Souls, but also in Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Elden Ring. The cycle of influence comes full circle with Elden Ring, which presents a vast open world with non-linear exploration and little enforced progression, clearly inspired by Breath of the Wild. Miyazaki and his team recognized the impact of Breath of the Wild's design freedom and adapt into the Souls formula, creating a massive world filled with hidden secrets and multiple paths. Severance: Blade of Darkness. This game has recently gained popularity for being very similar to the Souls series, despite being released 8 years before Demon Souls. Severance: Blade of Darkness is a Spanish game with a dark medieval fantasy setting, inspired by sword and sorcerer films like Conan the Barbarian, and by fantasy literature such as The Lord of the Rings. The game features high difficulty and stamina-based combat, very similar to the Souls series, and the Amazon character even rode just like the protagonist in the Souls games. In 2021, the game was re-released on Steam under the simplified title Blade of Darkness, and later ported to consoles, making it very accessible if you want to play it today. Kingsfield. Even before Armored Core, Kingsfield was the company's greatest franchise, with the first game released in 1994 for the original PlayStation. It was a first-person action RPG, and the series had 4 titles, along with several very similar games developed by From Software, such as the Shadow Tower franchise and Eternal Ring. Demon's Souls was directly influenced by Kingsfield. The setting is practically the same. In fact, the opening cutscene of Kingsfield 4, the Ancient City, if you ignore the narrator, feels like something taken straight out of Dark Souls.
The cursed land lies deep in a dense, colorless forest. Hidden within this land is an ancient city, once known to the forest folk as the Holy Land. Buried in the depths of the city, a warning was discovered long after the rulers have fallen. Grave misfortune will befall those who behold the idol that stares into the darkness. The idol, taken from the ancient land, led the kingdom down a path of destruction. The idol must be returned. Under a dark and cloudy sky, the Swordmaster led his men to the ancient land. The cursed land swallowed the soldiers, and all that remained was dark silence.
Shifters. Shifters is an action RPG developed and published by the 3DO company for the PlayStation 2, serving as a sequel to Warriors of Might and Magic, which was released for both the PlayStation 2 and the original PlayStation. Upon release, it did not receive much praise from critics, and was considered a mediocre or poor game overall. Indeed, the game features very outdated graphics for 2002, looking more like something from the Nintendo 64 era, and its gameplay feels awkward and strange. However, what's truly interesting is how many similarities it shares with the Souls series, including a target locking system, the use of consumable potions and to recover HP, similar to Dark Souls' Estus Flask, hidden secrets behind the walls, and the use of shields for defense when wielding a one-handed weapon. However, no shield is used when holding a weapon with 2 hands. It even features claustrophobic corridors, like Dark Souls. Enclave. I only found out about this game while researching for this video. Enclave is an action RPG developed by Starbreeze Studios, featuring 2 campaigns, the Light and Dark Paths. Honestly, Enclave looks more visually similar to Blade of Darkness than to the Soul series. However, its dark fantasy theme, combat style, and healing through drinking are all very reminiscent of Souls mechanics. The game was originally supposed to receive a sequel, but it was cancelled and reworked into Knights of the Temple: Infernal Crusade, a hack-and-slash game that turned out to be very different from Enclave. Castlevania: Symphony of the Night. Yes, Castlevania Symphony of the Night shares many elements with Dark Souls and the Souls series in general, as Dark Souls can be seen as a kind of 3D Metroidvania. Both games feature backtracking, shortcuts in a interconnected world, power-ups, and a variety of weapons and armor, and fixed checkpoints, meaning that whenever your character dies, they return to the last checkpoint they interacted with, no matter how far away it is. Not to mention the horror theme atmosphere. While Symphony of the Night isn't set in a medieval fantasy world, but rather in a vampire-filled gothic horror setting, its tone fits closely with From Software games, especially Demon's Souls and even more so Bloodborne. Ico. Hidetaka Miyazaki has often spoken about the profound impact that playing Ico had on him, not just as a gamer, but as a game designer. In interviews, Miyazaki described his experience with Ico as a life-changing, saying that it was one of the few games that truly moved him emotionally and showed him the potential of video games as an artistic medium. He reportedly played Ico as an adult. At the time, he was still working in a different industry. And the emotional depth, subtle storytelling, and a sense of connection between characters, particularly between the boy and Yorda, left a deep impression on him. It was one of the key inspirations that led him to change career and pursue game development more seriously, eventually joining From Software. Miyazaki admired how Ico told a powerful story without relying on heavily dialogue or exposition, instead using silence, body language, and atmosphere. This approach deeply influenced his own design philosophy, seen clearly in Dark Souls, where the world speaks for itself, and much of the story is conveyed through level design, hidden description, and environmental cues. Ico wasn't just an influence on Miyazaki, it was a turning point, showing him that games could be quite serious, emotionally resonant, and still deeply engaging. That spirit echoes throughout the Soul series and beyond. If you know another game that came before Demon's Souls that kind of resembles the Souls games, please say it in the comment section. Well, that's the end of the video. Please subscribe and share.